Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Tailgunner, Midnight Blitz, out February 6th on Napalm Records. The album has 10 tracks, 44 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a UK heavy metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, I felt like they went with an old school approach which matches the sound, the essence, and even the look of the band. This is a record that has a side A and a side B, really old school vinyl style approach. And the side B starts off with a ballad, which I really like, War in Heaven. I think that's always a great way to start a side B of any record, specifically when it comes to classic heavy metal, new wave of British heavy metal, or even power metal. I think that's the best spot for a ballad because it breaks the record. Even if you're listening to the album not in a vinyl format, it really helps break the album up, and it reduces the sense of similarity that the album could have up until that point. Creating a little bit of a ripple, creating a little bit of a reset, also allowing the second half of the album to be more dynamic, which in this case it's true, the second half of the album is definitely more dynamic than that sense of continuity that exists in the first half of the album. So the album is really designed in a very classic way, but in a classic way that plays perfectly into the hand of the band, considering the overall sound experience that this album offers. And that sound experience is definitely old school, new wave of British heavy metal, power metal. I would go as far as even to say some 80s arena rock is present, specifically in the size of these songs. Now, I don't want you guys to think that this album is copying what those bands did, bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest did in the past, and is just kind of reinventing it. I didn't feel that way. I felt like this album definitely showcases the influences of the band, but the way the songs are put together, you also start to see the band developing their own signature sound, their own signature approach, and then use those influences almost like the spark that allows everything else to fall in play. The production behind the album is excellent as well, really showcasing all the right elements and giving these songs quite a bit of size. I honestly felt like the tracks were bigger than I was expecting coming in, not really narrow at all, and filling in the room perfectly. Using the guitars, the drums, the bass to really create size, depth, width, and substance within the songs. Superly textured tracks, using a lot of layers to add to that size to make the songs feel more robust all around. And like I said, the production really enhancing the main core elements that you need when you talk about power metal or new wave of British heavy metal, which in my opinion are guitars first and foremost, vocals, and then the drums. These three elements really help shape up the size and the power that the songs have, and it's no different on this album by Tailgunner. The guitars, for example, on this record sound phenomenal. Great execution, great sound all around, great technique. The solo sections are outstanding, such an important element for this kind of band, for this kind of sound, and they deliver song in and song out, always with great impact, adding value to the songs, adding size to the songs, adding a lot of explosion to the songs. The way these tracks are driven by the guitars is definitely phenomenal. I really enjoy that old school, very warm guitar sound approach, not overly produced in my opinion, just enough to feel modern, but at the same time still represent that old school style when it comes to the execution. So I felt like the production on this album was able to walk this very fine line between bringing old school elements but not allowing the album to sound dated. The album sounds modern, it just brings old school influences into this new era. So the production behind this album is excellent, really helping the guitars. The guitars sound phenomenal throughout, definitely one of the cornerstones, one of the pillars of this record. And then you have the drums. The drums have great sound. I felt the power of the drums, which is not always the case in albums like this. I really felt the power of the drums, and I felt like they helped the guitars achieve that size, achieve in some cases even heaviness, but really push the drive, really push the songs forward, not just using one element to do so, but pairing up with the drums with guitars together, really giving the songs a lot more emphasis, giving them more size, more impact, and creating a more robust and a more complete sound all around. And then you get to the vocals. My goodness. The vocalist, Craig Cairns, this dude is phenomenal. Phenomenal vocal performance, top to bottom. I was really impressed with the approach, with the execution. and even a few changes here and there from song to song in order to emphasize certain words, certain lyrics, the mood of the track, the vibe of the song. But incredible performance. The range is outstanding. Perfect voice for this sound, for this band. I was just mesmerized song in and song out by how good the overall vocal performance is on the record. Really impactful, really memorable, and delivering consistently with quality, song in and song out, regardless of how driven or how more of a ballad it is. It doesn't matter. Just always great performance with every single track. Like I said, the range is incredible. I also really enjoyed the layers that the vocals have, specifically when it comes to the choruses. I felt like the verses, the vocals stood alone a little bit more, but every single chorus always had a little bit more layers. It had a little bit more texture to them, which helped with the size of the chorus and really helped create more of an impact. But outstanding performance throughout the entire album. You cannot have an album with this type of guitar sound, with this approach, without a vocalist that's able to deliver at this level. And definitely Craig is one of those vocalists that can deliver at that level, making this an old school sounding record, both musically and vocally, but still that inspiration in that old school approach doesn't undermine the record, allows the album to still feel very modern and not necessarily an album that was lost through time. And I think this is an important aspect for Tailgunner going forward. You always want to carry those influences on your sleeve, but you don't want them to necessarily define the overall sound of the record. You want to be able to be a more modern band, define what your sound is going to be like, and then use those influences as the catalyst for everything else that happens. And I felt like this album really achieves on all fronts as far as that's concerned. Now, as far as favorite songs go, I want to start off with Follow Me in Death. Melodic, guitar-driven track, really melodic guitar-driven track, bringing a lot of power metal into this song and mixing it in with a more classic heavy metal style, allowing the guitars to really reign supreme throughout the entire track, and the drums really help the size aspect of the song. The vocals, like I mentioned before, excellent on this track. Once again, a little bit more alone in the verses, a little bit more layered in the chorus, which gives the chorus more size, more impact, if you will. And then you see the song switch up also sonically, a little bit more narrow in the verses, a little bit more wider in the chorus. The solo section on this song is aces, really making the song feel a little bit bigger, a little bit more powerful, giving a little bit more meaning to the way the track comes together. Beautifully executed, which just adds to the overall great guitar experience, sound, and vibe that this song has and the whole record has. Then you have a track like Barren Lands and Seas of Red. This track is really interesting to me because it pops in with the bass right from the get-go. At least you could feel the bass, you could hear the bass early on in the song. And that to me was really important because it allows the track to have a lot of same commonalities as other songs on this record, specifically the drive, the tempo. But by adding the bass or making the bass a little bit more predominant, changes your perception of the song and changes how you see the song. You have all the same ingredients, but you're just changing the order in which they're thrown into the pot as far as the recipe is concerned. It allows things at the end of the day to come across in a different perspective. And this track is a really perfect example of how this band, always using the same tools, creates much different objects. This song is interesting because of that. I think that sets it apart. It's a track that has a very rich sound all around, fast, driven. That's pretty much it's pretty much the norm as far as this overall record is concerned, with great guitars leading the way, also the norm. The drums complementing the sound, adding size to the sound, also the norm. Like they are very consistent in their approach. It's just the way they showcase it that changes, and the bass on this track really helps change it. Now there's another element on this track that makes the song quite different, at least to me, and that is the main melody, the main style riff on this track sounds very Iron Maiden-like. And perhaps of all the influences that the band has in all the songs on this record, this is one of those where you can definitely pinpoint the Iron Maiden influences in the band just by looking at how the guitar is played, the sound, the execution, and how the song is structured and how the song is put together from a production standpoint. Great track, amazing solo section once again, just really spot on, great song that perhaps removes the veil a little bit more than others and showcases those influences a little bit more clear. Then you have Night Raids. Night Raids is similar to Barren Lands and Seas of Red in terms of the drive, in terms of the speed, in terms of the tempo. But where the other track had those influences a little bit more visible and also using the bass in a different way, which goes well with that Iron Maiden sound, this track feels to me a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, a little bit more impactful from a guitar and drum standpoint. The tempo, the movement, very similar between the two, but this one carries a little bit more weight with it, and that's where things change. I also like the more melodic chorus, but equally driven. That allows the song to not necessarily feel more narrow in the verses and a little bit bigger in the chorus, as Follow Me in Death does. This track allows things to feel a little bit more uniform across. There are changes once you go from the verses to the chorus, obviously, but they minimize those changes in order for the song to feel more linear all the way through. And when you have a song that's more linear all the way through, that drive, that push, mixed in with heaviness, really gives a lot of size consistently to the song top to bottom. I like the approach, once again, using the exact same tools, but mixing them differently allows the song overall to feel like it's tied in very closely to all the other songs on the record, but when you look at closer, you can see the uniquenesses that it carries. That is pretty much the DNA of this entire album. This is it, Tailgunner with Midnight Blitz. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll be seeing you on my next video. Take care, guys.